All right, welcome back to the Atlantic Construction Podcast. Today we have two representatives from two major players in the industry, IRC Building Sciences Group, a Rimkus company, and Soprema. So we have Charles McCormick from Soprema and Kyle Kennedy from IRC Building Sciences Group. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Kyle, you made the trip from New Brunswick this morning.
Yeah, it's nice to get in another province.
Yeah, some good weather for the drive anyway.
It's a treat.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today, guys. The current state of the market, mostly focusing on roofing and the roofing industry. So roofing contractors, leave your comments and hope you get a chance to tune into this. But maybe we'll start with just a little background with you guys, your journey in the industry, and then we'll touch on a couple of points about Soprema and IRC Building Sciences Group. So maybe we'll start with you, Kyle. I know you worked for Flynn for, I don't know, was it 10 years or?
Yeah, it was 8 years. So I got pretty lucky. I went to college right out of high school, did civil technology for engineering, project management, and I got scooped up by Flynn right out. They're an awesome company. I worked there for 8 years as an estimator, transitioned to project management, and they're the biggest building envelope contractor in North America, so it was a great experience.
So has Flynn been in, like when you joined Flynn 8 years ago, was that around the time they kind of expanded into Atlantic Canada or shortly after?
So they had been in Atlantic Canada for a while, about 4 years before I got in there, I believe. But the growth they had over the 8 years was crazy. I think they went from 20 branches to 32, and I can't even keep track anymore. They're adding one a month in the States, so it was a great experience. I did a couple projects for them out west, and it was.
You're in Manitoba for a bit.
Yeah, I was in Brandon, the big city of Brandon, Manitoba.
Nice.
So it was drive for 2 hours and still be on the same road, in a straight line.
You see your dog run away for days? Is that the saying?
Yeah, that's the saying, I think, yeah. But awesome city and a great group of guys there. So, I really enjoyed my time at Flynn.
Yeah, and so you managed jobs for Flynn all across Atlantic Canada, just New Brunswick, or just all around?
I was just New Brunswick based, but we worked pretty closely between the team. In the Maritimes, same as that IRC now. It's... Yeah. Everyone works so close together.
Right, and as a project manager, you're likely dealing with multiple projects at the same time, different roof assemblies, all kinds of labor force and all kinds of...
I wish it would be A, B, C, D, but it's a lot of A to D to F, that kind of thing, back to A. So, no, it's part of the gig.
All right, and we'll come right back to you, Kyle, and talk maybe about just what it's like going from a contracting background and working with IRC Building Sciences Group, a Rimkus company, and just kind of what it's like to see the industry through a new light, a new perspective that way. But Charles McCormick, thanks for being here. You've been working with Soprema for, I don't know how many years, 25 you said? Maybe?
No, I've been in the industry for about 25 years. I didn't start with Soprema, but I ended up here. I've been here for a little over 10 years. I went to University of Waterloo, took environmental studies, anticipated that I'd be in some related field, and ended up kind of organically getting through into the roofing industry and went with a couple of other companies at first, came to Soprema, and it's a good place to be. And our corporate culture spends a lot of time on sustainability and design for long-term solutions rather than kind of a quick fix that doesn't last. So it's, in a very strange way, it's now aligning with what I went through university with, and it makes me feel whole or something like that.
Well, that's always good. It's good to tie in the education there. And I guess environmental is never going to go to waste no matter what industry you're in, what position you're in.
Well, I was on the board of the Canada Green Building Council down here for quite a few years, and it was nice to tie in my interest with my profession. I met a lot of like-minded individuals, so it's a good place to be.
Yeah, maybe tell us about, obviously Soprema is a leader in the industry, obviously very high quality materials and stuff, but also, they have, they're the only Canadian manufacturer of, in-house design and dealing with architects and that kind of thing. Just maybe give us a little background about what you see at Soprema and why you guys have been able to achieve the status that you have.
Well, I think one of the things that differentiates us to some of the manufacturers is that we take a holistic approach and we look at a complete system And it's not just the system, the roofing system or the wall system or the foundation system, but the building as an entity. So we spend a lot of time thinking how the wall relates to the roof, to the foundation.
Right.
Because
Those tie-ins are so important.
because when you get a tie-in that's not done properly, it doesn't matter where it is, it's going to affect the entire envelope. So we consider ourselves a building envelope company. We started as a roofing manufacturer, but we're bigger than that now, and we look at projects as a whole. If we have a good relationship with a contractor who's on the roof, we try to leverage that into getting into some of the other systems within the building. I think we also are very proactive in how we develop products. We look at long-term solutions, what's going to work, what the pain points are in the industry. When we developed laminated panels in the industry, it was because there's a real shortage of labor out there, and with that shortage of labor sometimes comes some quality control issues on jobs. So we thought, what can save contractors some time, differentiate us in the market, and produce a product that's going to be a game changer. So with our our smart board system, that's where we were going with it, and it's taken off because the labor shortage in the industry isn't going to get better anytime soon. It's a
Right.
It's a real
So
issue.
with your position as senior sales, business development, am I right? Is that's
Yeah, and there's architectural rep in there somewhere
right?
too.
So, but that's I guess what I was leading into is like you're dealing with these architects as a big part of your job to try and
Yeah.
get these new materials specced, to maybe try and talk them into using something that's more relevant for a certain situation, or that's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think one of the things, a lot of the architects like dealing with us because we don't experiment with products. We don't bring it to the market, cross our fingers and hope it works. We do the vetting up front in our labs, and we
Yeah.
do some case studies and see how it works. Then we introduce it to the market. So they know if, I can count the products that didn't work as planned on one hand over 10 years. I mean, we really don't have significant product issues because we do the research up
Yeah.
front, so that when an architect calls and he says, I need a solution for this, that's kind of what we get more and more of is we're solutions providers. As much as, it's roofing or it's walls or whatever, we're offering the architect or the owner an answer to what they need. We're not trying to say, okay, our box is square, you're round, how are we going to make it work? We figure out how to make our product work for their need.
Right, well, and at the same time, you're in tandem working with the contractor to provide them
Yeah.
a material that's of cost efficiency with something that's going to work and be in line with their labor rates and those kind of things too.
Yeah,
so
you
it's a
always-
lot of things to balance.
You always have to be aware that as a manufacturer, you may have an absolutely amazing product that's 5 times more expensive than anything else out there, but it works. But you'll have a hard time getting buy-in from the contractor because they have other products that are sort of okay.
Unless you can talk them into the fact that they're eliminating layers of labor.
Yeah.
If
If you
it's-
can justify that,
streamlining, yeah.
yeah, if you can justify that price point and make them understand that the labor costs a lot more than material.
Yeah.
If you can do that and it works, that's fine. But there are some products where it's not going to take in the market because
Right.
it's not serving a purpose.
Right, and talk a little bit about, you mentioned the R&D situation with Soprema. Obviously, it's backward integrated. There's so many different players full of staff of building engineers, building sciences people. How's the company kind of set up that way to stay on top of the market, stay on top of the products? I mean, that's a big operation.
Yeah, so we've got R&D labs all over the country, actually all over North America, effectively worldwide. So in Drummondville, we have an active lab that is testing existing materials for quality control, plus looking at developing new products as well all the time. So we don't know everything they're doing as far as what's coming up. We hear of some products that are being developed and sort of have a heads up, and then we see what comes out. I know when we acquire companies, we've acquired a few companies over the last few years, Soprema will look at what they're doing and how can we change the product line or make it work better for our systems. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the lab is spending hours figuring out what works and what doesn't work.
Well, that's got to be subject to the fact that you're trying to develop business in Atlantic, Canada is going to be different than if you're at the other end of the country or somewhere in the States, right? Because
Yeah.
contractors are wanting different things. They have different weather conditions, all kinds of different elements to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't, what works in Texas doesn't necessarily work here. It may work here, but you have to pre-qualify it. It's not always the answer.
If you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band.
Well, that's exactly right.
So Kyle, you mentioned QAs, quality assessments. I think that's a good lead into IRC Building Sciences Group. Obviously, IRC Building Sciences Group is a Canadian national engineering firm. Recently merged with Rimkus company from the States,
Yep.
Forensic Engineering. And so I just wondered if you could tell us about, obviously your background is in roofing, your background's in contracting, and then making the switch to working with IRC Building Sciences Group now as a project manager, and sort of what that's like to see the industry from that point of view. Obviously, you've dealt with that before. There's a lot of QAs done on roofs. I mean, roof's an element of the building, of the shell. It's obviously very susceptible to anything that's not done right. It's going to show up, right? So just tell us what it's like for you to see things now from that perspective, in that light, working with Building Sciences Group on that end.
Well, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and like Chuck alluded to earlier, anytime you're dealing with tie-ins, your walls, your roof, that's your problematic areas in your building down the road. So that's where you really want to make sure you have a design that works. And what's been fun for me is being a part of that and making sure that the owners get a quality product, and that starts with using products like Soprema or other manufacturers out there. And what we really do and take pride in is putting these specs together that we know are going to work. We know they're quality products. We know they're going to be a quality contractor, so that you don't have to worry about those tie-ins, at the walls, the roof. And it's been fun being on the contractor side of things and hey, let's get this project done, on time, on budget, and a good quality. But it's been a lot of fun going to an owner that says, hey, look, I got this massive project and I don't know where to start. And it's fun to kind of take them and say, hey, this is what you do, and we'll be with you all the way through, all the way to quality observations. So we're on site with them, with the contractor, working with them, making sure that it's done
2 or
right.
3 times a week, probably, or even more than that sometimes, depending on the size of the job. Or
Whatever's needed, the fun part about being with a company the size of IRC now and with Rimkus merging with us is that if we're not an expert ourselves, someone in the company is. Like, we have such a wealth of knowledge that there's very little we can't do. I said, this is all the services we provide. I guarantee they're everything you can think of, and I guarantee there's more that you can't even think of that you probably could use, right? So it's and it's more and more every day. Every day we hear of these new technology out there, and how can we serve the customers better with it?
So IRC is coming at, when it comes to the roofing contractor, they've got a list of preferred contractors. They write the spec, put the materials that they know work, and then they go, and when the materials are being installed by that preferred contractor, they're QAing, quality observing, the whole thing, right, all the way through, just for our listeners who aren't familiar with that.
And I always get asked what IRC stands for, and we kind of got pigeonholed as the roofing consultants, because what we were known as, it's industrial roofing consultants, and we're so much more than that since we became a company in 1992, and in the 30 years we're full building envelope now. We're forensic, we're everything. So yes, we write the spec, but we're there before that. We, especially myself with background in roofing, we're on that project site before we even think about speccing it out. We're doing core tests, we're doing dimensions, we're making sure that
leak investigations and thermal scans and things like that. Yeah.
So, it's a lot of it sometimes for the customer is, hey, I'm not ready for a new roof yet, or I don't have the capital funding. How do I get through this for another 2 years? And that's when we can do a thermal scan. We can write you a spec for repairs, and we can walk the contractor through it. Not that the contractor's not knowledgeable. There's a lot of really good contractors out there, but we're there to give a hand and kind of bridge that parity.
And you can never know everything, right? I mean, sure, there's conflict on site whenever you're an installer and someone's coming by checking your work. It's like no one ever likes being watched, but at the same time, if you're a good contractor, you don't mind that, because how things are supposed to be done. You're confident, you know what you're doing, and they're just there to, bounce things off of and make sure things are done right. And you can't cut any corners when you're doing roofs, or the owner's going to pay for it.
Wow, and that was my hesitancy coming over from the contractor side, going to the consultant side.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that inspector up on the roof. But that's been so far from the truth. I mean, we're working up there together. We're all friendly about it. At the end of the day, all the contractors we're using, the good reputable contractors, they want to work with us to give a good result to the customer, right? There's no hiding anything.
No, exactly. Let's talk about that, contractors and specifically roofing contractors, because you're working in New Brunswick for IRC Building Sciences Group.
Yep.
Chuck, do you mainly focus on sales for Soprema in Nova Scotia, HRM, or all over?
Well, Nova Scotia, and I work with one of our reps in Newfoundland as well, just because I've been there for a long time and we have some relationships that are there.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's. I just want to kind of talk about the roofing industry in general and the current state of the market. But Kyle, I remember you saying with New Brunswick, there's a lot of good quality roofing contractors there, and I think Chuck may be here. In Nova Scotia, the workload is so big, the industry is booming so much that there's not enough quality contractors. Do you agree with that statement? Or?
Yeah, I think what we've got now is that the quality contractors are
busy.
Their plates are full.
Their plates are full.
We're now seeing periodically you'll see a foreman from an existing contractor starting his own firm, or maybe a contractor from away who sees some opportunity here coming in. So, I think it doesn't mean that these new contractors aren't good contractors, but there's a learning curve when you start contracting, and we typically work with the larger established contractors, but the market's always growing. They all started somewhere. So.
Well, exactly. Everybody started somewhere. I mean, you have to start somewhere, exactly. But you were saying, Kyle, too, that there's a lot of new roofing companies now that are starting up in New Brunswick too, because the market is so busy there as well.
I mean, general rule of thumb, there's 1 or 2 that are going to try to come in each year. And what's good for the province in general is that it seems like it's sustainable, right? 5-10 years ago, there was maybe 4 or 5 big players, but now it seems like there's 6 or 7, and the market can sustain it now, and a lot of them are pushing into Nova Scotia too. Like, we're seeing a lot of branches that were just in New Brunswick kind of coming into Nova Scotia to help with the workload, because it's needed. Like, Halifax is booming right now. Driving to town, look at all the cranes that are up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So who are the 4 or 5 big roofing contractors in New Brunswick, like, that you're working with on various sites for IRC Building Sciences Group all the time? I mean, who do you see on site?
I'm sure I'm going to leave some out, so apologies, guys. But I mean, you got Flynn, obviously. I worked with him before. ATEC, Evolution, Atlantic.
Yeah.
I would say those are probably the 4 main known guys, with Bro coming into the province recently.
Yeah.
And again, it ranges from province to province. Some are more prominent in some provinces other, but those would be the main players, and they've been around for a long time.
And Chuck, who are you dealing with here in Nova Scotia? I mean, all the same ones,
similar.
and then some others.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some large but slightly smaller, like PMC, and we've got some other contractors that we deal with local to the Newfoundland market. There's Newfound Roofing and some of the other folks over there, but it generally, I think we're pulling from more or less the same gene pool. We're working with the same clients, and that makes it good, because I think between companies we've got a pretty good synergy. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about how are things looking right now in the current state of the market for roofing. I mean, what are the issues? I know, Chuck, you're having to turn what issues. What are the biggest issues? We don't have time to talk about all the issues, but like you're telling me before we're on the air that it's so busy that you're having to turn down sometimes certain jobs, and the backlog of supply chain situations and pushing things back, and when people need roof attention, they kind of need it right away, especially as a building owner. So just maybe let's open that up and talk about that.
Well, I think certainly in the Halifax market specifically, we've got exponential growth in development. The multi-unit residential is on fire, and it's been strong for quite a long time. But now it's the demand is so high that a lot of these developers are full before they even finish the building. So in a normal market, that would just add some stress to the supply, but would be able to carry on fine. But we had COVID affected the production in a lot of facilities. Staff weren't fully in place in some of the operations. Plants were closed, and we had a lot of manufacturers kind of had to cut back on their production. Then in February in Texas, they had ice storms and snowstorms, 3 of them in a row, that paralyzed the state for a good few days. The problem with that is some of the manufacturing for the raw materials that go into insulation, for example, are produced in Texas. So when those plant went down, they didn't just stop producing. A lot of the equipment was destroyed as well because it froze, and they didn't have the ability to unfreeze it. So that supply backed up, and the effect of that is just it ripples into everything. So we've got kind of a higher demand, lower capacity to service the market, and it's not Soprema, it's worldwide. And the similar instances happen around the world with supply issues. So it's been a challenging time to provide product in a timely fashion.
So for our listeners, we're talking about commercial, industrial, flat roofs. It's Modbit, EPDM. I mean, what do you see mostly? What's the main assemblies?
Modbit would be, the torch-on type roofing is the most common, certainly in Atlantic. The other technology, single ply, has a market share, and we've actually had liquid PMMA roofs installed as well. I did one in Halifax, the building. It's now called the Crane Building, where the crane fell on the building. That was my
great
first
marketing technique to call it.
It was the first big PMMA job in Halifax, and it worked perfectly. And so there's a few different technologies out there, and that's one of the important things that we have now is if somebody comes to Soprema and says, I want roof A, well, maybe a couple of the components of roof A may not be readily available, or there may be a delay. We can kind of offer a couple of different solutions to try to fill that need. And that's what's becoming more and more important at this time because, some of our competitors are in a much worse position than we are as far as supply, and they've actually stopped taking orders. So we're not there. We're just managing expectations.
Right, and Kyle, you're seeing the same thing when you're on site with these contractors when you're doing QAs and thermal scans and stuff.
Yeah, and it's funny to think you would have thought that back at the early COVID we'd see it right away, but it hasn't been the case. Everything kind of carried along. I mean, not normal, but normal-ish enough for contractors. And then in these last few months, the wait times have just kind of multiplied, and it's like Chuck said, it's not just Soprema, it's everyone, it's across the board. Some are handling it better than others. It's challenging, but what we're seeing now is that, I mean, realistically, in the Maritimes, we get 8 to 12 good construction weeks a year. So we're getting into that time crunch now where it's, what do we tell these customers?
Because if they have roofing needs, I mean, it's got to be done the next few months before the temperature goes below 5 degrees
And what we see a lot in roofing too. I mean, you're not up on your roof every day. It's normally the last thing you think of when you're in your building, and sometimes maybe wrongfully so. But a lot of times we get into these situations where their roof is shot. And they've just come to realize it now, and now we're dealing with the challenges and like Chuck said again, well, we can't give you roof A, but maybe we can do roof B, or maybe we can do, some repairs for you, get you through. I mean, this isn't going to be forever, but it's definitely challenging now.
So you're thinking what's the wait time? I mean, you're thinking it's a 12-week kind of lead time on average for.
On some of the components, like some of the insulation technologies, they're stretching out there. Is it mostly the insulation and technology as far as the ingredients in that Modbit assembly, or is it everything? No, it's once you figure out what it is, somebody tells you there's something else that's not available. That's the frustrating part because you've got your sandwich, and then, well, for example, now it's fasteners. So it's a screwed down system. We find out we can't get fasteners, so the whole component's ready to go. But we don't have
the
one
6 or 8 inch
so,
fasteners or whatever they are.
Yeah, it means you have a lot of orders sitting there waiting to go.
So are you dealing with architects whenever there's a 5-inch insulation spec trying to get hey, we have some 5.5, can we use this? Or this okay?
I actually sent out a communication and made some calls to contractors and architects and said, look, I know we're used to giving you exactly what you asked for, and we don't try to fiddle around with the specs, but we're in a really difficult time, and we are the same as every other division in a construction process. We're all challenged, but what we can do is we can offer you a solution that may not be exactly what you asked for, but it's not compromising what you're getting. It's just not exactly what was written. So can you please at least consider it? And so far, I think I've had one job where the architect just said, no, I want this. And we ended up accommodating, but it wasn't easy. But we all as a community have to be flexible.
Well, let's talk about how an IRC Building Sciences Group, a Rimkus company, and Soprema you're kind of working in tandem to try and solve this problem. So if I'm a developer, building asset owner, and I've got roof problems, and I'm thinking I'd like to replace my roof now because I've got a few months left, and if I don't do it now, I'm going to have problems, and I'm going to have to spend more money after the winter. And there's a backlog of materials that can't wait that long. There's kind of a repair versus replace option where IRC can come to site and do thermal scan, do a roof condition assessment, and say, here's what we can do for you. Soprema can supply the materials, and it's not just a Band-Aid solution. It's actually going to solve your problem, and it's just the way the market is now. This is the best avenue to go.
Yeah, for sure. So what we tell our customers a lot is, first off, we have to know where you're coming from and where you're at. So a roof condition assessment is the way to go to find that out. We'll tell you exactly how much more life you have in your building and what we can do, and then we'll work really closely with the manufacturer. So, I mean, we're in constant communication with Sopremas, with the other manufacturers out there roofing-wise. Look, this is what we really think works well for this building. What are the lead times before we even put this out to spec? I mean, we have a pretty good pulse on the market of, how busy are these contractors? We only use a preferred contractor list, so it's a couple phone calls. How busy are you guys? Like, if we put this out, is it even going to make it before the winter? And then the next call is, okay, Soprema, look, we want to do a fully adhered system with your smart board. What's the lead time? What are we looking at? And then we'll adjust from there. And then it becomes, well, if we can't do it this year, let's do a thermal scan, and maybe we can give a recap for you, right? So we can leave the majority of your existing roof, navigate away from the products that are short, like the ISO right now, and still service our customer and give them a good product, right?
Yeah.
So,
and for our listeners, just sort of explain the difference between a full replacement and a recap, and what that means for just starting at a certain layer, where it's the importance of the.
Yeah, so we're in a cold climate here, so we typically in a common system would have a vapor barrier, then some insulation, and then your waterproofing, which could be Modbit, could be single ply, blah blah blah. The list goes on. PMA. So what we can do is we can go up with a thermal scan. We can have a look at your roof, and
a thermal scan is it's an infrared scan that's going to find where the moisture's.
Yeah, so it's a tiny little camera. We always say it's a tiny little camera, but it can save you a whole bunch of money because what it'll just do is it'll pick up differences in infrared. So by doing that, if you had a leak in your building or on your roof, that's going to show up like a big bullseye for us on that camera saying, look, that's wet. We'll spray paint it. We'll probe it to confirm it. Yeah, that's wet. Unfortunately, that's got to come out. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes, that's not your whole roof. If you're proactive enough, it might just be 5-10%. So, if to a building owner, if you can leave 90% of your roof up there, it's in good shape. It's still warrantable. We'll take out what's old and put in new. That's a great compromise.
Yeah,
right?
And that's going to help you guys, Chuck. You don't have the full roof material sitting there in the warehouse, and you can just have to give 10%. Then you can make that work right away.
Well, it's funny because the company for a long time has been talking about sustainability and design and not replacing things that don't need to be replaced. Like
Absolutely.
we've had a program in place with recaps. We've actually done a couple of recaps with IRC. We did one in Newfoundland, quite a big one. And we've talked about scanning, checking the roof condition, replacing the areas that are bad, and if it's feasible and it makes sense economically, recap and off you go. We at one point we had a marketing campaign with the 100-year roof, which was a series of recaps. We even warranty that recap system.
So what, every 20, 25 years? That's a
and I mean typically you put a new membrane on. If you should. With proper drainage, there's no reason for 20, 25 years you couldn't get life out of your roof. And the whole idea is that we don't believe in throwing everything in the landfill, creating a bigger footprint than you need to. And it's not exactly counterintuitive to manufacturing, because you think we want to sell as much product as possible. We already had that idea in place that we're trying to be more responsible corporate citizens, but because of need now, this is something that we strongly believe that it's a way to deal with another issue, which is the difficulty getting product in the market. So we're trying to work with IRC together and offer some solutions to keep people kind of hit two things at once.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit more about IRC Building Sciences Group, because I know it's kind of a hard thing to explain to people exactly what a building sciences group is, and I think now since you're here, Kyle, we should touch on it a little bit. I have the pleasure of knowing Mike Stewart from New Glasgow. I know I might get some of this wrong, but I think he's grown it in the last 7 years, basically from starting point to I think well over 30 employees here in Atlantic Canada for field techs, engineers, architectural technologists, CAD people. Him and his wife Tracy Stewart, and it's a unique business in that, like you said, it's not just roofing. They focus on 4 pillars, I think: parking lots, paving, roofing, building envelope, and structural.
That's right. Yep.
So where they're doing building condition assessments, full BCAs, some people will call them FCAs, but different terms, facility condition assessments, where they're managing buildings for building asset owners as if they're assets, and saying, whether it's a QA of a parking lot, building envelope assessment, or the roof assessment, like they're kind of approaching the life cycle of the building, trying to say, here's where we see some issues and reporting on that. Engineers report on it. Field techs collect the data, and then kind of telling building asset owners where they can spend money now to save money in the future, treating the building like a living organism, saying here's the issues, and constantly that upkeep. So it's not something that all engineering firms do and specialize in, and I know that IRC as a building sciences group is different in that regard as well. And some of the testings that they can offer there's not a lot of other people to go to for things like pull tests and bonded uplift tests and those kind of things. I know IRC's into drones and some new technologies with the Matterport camera, and there's all kinds of things to talk about, but you just maybe just give us a little bit of
it's a lot to summarize for sure, but
I'm trying to articulate it in the way that I want to. I think I did okay, but I'm sure
you did a great job.
Yeah.
So and what you said, life cycle, that's a huge part of it, and the 4 pillars. So we talk 4 pillars, but honestly at this point, anything building related, we have the expertise to take it with you, or if not, we can point you in the right direction. So a lot of fun for me working at IRC is all the technology we have. So we already touched base on the thermal scans. We also have technology for pull tests. So a big part now we're seeing, especially with general contractors, as they get into more design builds, they're taking on more of the spec writing, more of the risk, more of the responsibility. And what we're seeing from that is an increased need. Well, if we're going to put this system down, whether it be a wall system or a roof system, we should make sure that it's going to perform. And we can read the specs and we can go to the manufacturer and make sure that is the case. But at the end of the day, you got to test what is going on site. So we have the expertise to do that. We go on site, we'll do a pull test, we'll make sure everything lines up. It's all checked by an engineer.
With the proper gear,
with the
proper tools.
Exactly. So and that gives the peace of mind of both the owner and the general contractor, right, or the team that's working on that project. So that's becoming a big part of what we do. Another cool part that we're just coming out, and it's so cool to see, because I mean 20 years ago, what I'll talk about next here, like it would have blown people's mind, but now there's like, oh, it's just a camera. So but it's so much more than that. So we also have technology now, this Matterport camera. And what it does is it takes a 3D render of your building, takes a whole bunch of photos. So kind of like what you would see with a realtor now. You're seeing a lot of maybe high-end listings that they'll go in.
Point cloud.
Exactly, yeah. So they'll go in, they'll take a 3D render of your building, and you can kind of walk through the building without walking through the building. What Matterport does for us and how it applies to the contract and the construction industry side of thing, we can do that, and we can give you just that if you want. But what we can actually give you now, which I find incredibly cool, is that you can measure off this 3D render. So we can go into your building, we can set this Matterport up a couple different times, a couple different setups. We'll generate you a 3D floor plan. you can walk through that forever. That is a permanent historical record of what your building is.
Yeah, it's almost like you're using Google Earth. Like you're just constantly clicking forward and walking through the space.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, but what you can do, the cool part about it is you can actually measure within that program. So if you have a wall and say, and this really comes in handy for general contractors that are doing a fit up or a brand new build and the walls are exposed, but they're covering them all up with drywall tomorrow. So what they can do is that we can come in, do that scan for them when all the conduit, all the plumbing, all the wiring that you're going to bury is exposed. We'll do that Matterport. You have that forever now.
Yeah, you go back and look if the screw went through a pipe or any number of things within that assembly.
Because, I mean, ask any general contractor, when you go to commission a building and you go to turn everything on and cut that ribbon, something's not going to work. A light switch isn't going to work. Some plumbing is going to be,
You go back to that specific area, zoom right in, you could see as close as if there's a little insect on there.
And this thing is accurate at 10 feet within an inch. So it's more than close enough for what you need for that, and you'll have it forever. So to go back to the light switch example, if for some reason you're turning on a light switch in a building and it's not going on, before they would have to tear out a whole bunch of drywall, right? Like, they got to expose and find out what the issue is, unless they have really, really good detailed drawings and as-bills. Now it's as simple as, okay, well, we have that Matterport. We can go back and measure that. So that's another cool piece of technology. And again, like when we talk IRC, a lot of people think, well, they're roof consultants. Yeah. It's more than that.
It's not the case anymore.
It's not the case anymore. And
so any general contractors, even architects that are listening, building owners, IRC Building Sciences Group, you can definitely find them online. And like I said, employees all through Halifax, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, PEI. So
we're across North America now. Honestly, we have branches coast to coast of Canada, and with their parent company Rimkus, we're acquiring new consultant companies by the week. Wherever you're based, we can service you essentially.
Yeah, I think is it Alex Reddy in New Brunswick who's now doing some drone work with IRC.
Yeah, so that's actually pretty cool. So. Alex was actually a commercial pilot before she came over to us. Not that you have to be a commercial pilot to fly a drone, but it's still pretty cool. So the big thing with drones right now is you have to really make sure if you hire someone for a drone, you can't just hire Joe Blow off the street that bought a drone off Amazon. You've got to have
the proper licensing, the safety parachutes, all these various
exactly.
things.
There's a lot of restrictions that go into it. Alex has all that.
Yeah.
We can fly almost anywhere.
Yeah. You can fly downtown Halifax, whereas maybe I don't know of anyone else that could do that right now.
And we were actually on at Acadia last week.
And you're using the drone as a tool to do an envelope assessment.
So Alex was actually on site.
Or progress
on
videos.
On a 20-story high building, doing a building envelope inspection that otherwise we would have had to bring swing stage in, with scaffolding, who knows, right? So it's a great tool. It's a complementary piece now to help us, whatever you need. Like I say, we go back to.
I think they can do orthographic measurements, even
so
topographical. So
we can generate roof plans right from the drone.
Integrated with CAD, right?
Yeah, integrated with CAD, exactly. So there's very little we can't do now, and we just keep adding this technology. So it's great.
Chuck, didn't mean to leave you that long, but back to
learning. I was learning some new things.
So for you, for the state of the market and for Soprema now, just how do you see things, progressing, moving forward and into the future here? And it's been a tough couple of years, I think, for everybody. Well,
I think we were talking earlier, and we both felt that the COVID situation would make things go bad quickly. But we didn't see the results of everything that was happening until, this summer and moving into the fall. So that combination of the Texas situation and COVID hasn't made it easy. I think we're going to see some real challenges moving forward. I mean, we're all struggling through, and I keep saying Soprema's kind of ahead of the curve as far as being able to supply the products, but we're feeling pressure too. I think the worst isn't here yet, because I think some of the companies that are out there that are holding on as far as supply, I think we're seeing the well dry up a bit. I think it's going to be a bit more challenging. But the other problem is when you slow down your to market product, you start getting backlogs. So we may be, our production may be full speed, but we've got so many orders in the hopper in the back that we're we're not showing that we're ahead of the market now because we're trying to catch up with what was already kind of booked. So it's going to take an adjustment. I think as an industry, I think all industries, it's not, I mean, we're talking about roofing or waterproofing, but, go to a gyprock manufacturer. They have the same, paving asphalt, same thing. Yeah. So I think as a world, really, we're not going to see a writing of this until the beginning of next year. I think we'll hit not a crisis point, but we'll hit, my feeling is, mid to late September, it's going to be quite painful.
Right, and that's why you're trying to get this out there now, prior to that crisis point, where, hey, be prepared. Here's this.
We want to be proactive and partnering, with IRC. We know both companies know each other. We enjoy doing business together, and there's a synergy there already. So coming to market with a solution before everything stops, where I think this is a really positive approach, and it's again recognizing what the market needs and maybe offering a solution that isn't obvious. And I think it's something and it's also good corporate culture to look at, question why we're replacing everything. Why aren't we looking at some of our existing buildings and saying, you know what, we don't have to tear everything apart. Why don't we just look at making it more efficient or repairing the areas that need attention? It's really being good humans as well as offering a solution. I mean, I don't want to make it is roofing. We're not that noble, but it is a it's a good approach to a situation, I think.
Yeah. So is Drummondville kind of the muster point within your supply chain where all of your ingredients are coming to Atlantic Canada, most of the materials?
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not just R&D stuff that goes on there. It's manufacturing as well.
Yeah, the majority of our manufacturing is concentrated in Quebec. We've got Drummondville and Sherbrooke for some insulation products, and the majority of the things, and we actually bring some products from out west from one of our plants, but the majority of our components for our projects come from that Drummondville hub. The only time we have very little control over what's happening is when we're using a third party, like a roof board manufacturer, where we're buying their products and reselling them. We're somewhat at the mercy, for them. And that's why Soprema's always taken an approach where if it's an essential component in our system, if possible, we try to acquire the company so that we have control over that vertical integration, and we know, we can have a much better control over the market, and we're not at the mercy of the other company. It's more that we hold all we take ownership, but by the same token, we take full responsibility for those products. So
absolutely. Well, any final thoughts or any final comments? I know this has been it's been a great conversation. Hopefully, we have lots of developers and building owners and GCs and roofing contractors tune in and watch at least a few clips of this conversation. It's been a pleasure. Any final comments? Or
I just think it's where we're going. If it works, is a natural progression in the market. We're forced to go there somewhat because of what's happening, but I think it's a really smart move that's being kind of pushed on us because of the situation. And I think in the end, you'll see a lot more uptake than perhaps we expected. But
yeah, I think COVID's really forced us to look at things. It's cliche, but to look at it a different way. And I think this material shortage, like you said, is just another way of, well, how do we adapt? And there's going to be new solutions that come out of this, and it's going to be a good thing in the end. It's tough right now. I'm sure all the roofing contractors listening right now are going to say, well, when's it going to get better? And there's no magic answer right now, but I think it's going to be a good thing in the end. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Kyle Kennedy from IRC Building Sciences Group, a Rimkus company, and Charles McCormick from Soprema. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Been a real pleasure. Thanks for making the trip from New Brunswick, Kyle, and Charles. Thank you as well. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Atlantic Construction Podcast. Be sure to follow us on any podcast platform you use. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Atlantic Construction Podcast. Be sure to send us a comment or a review. We'd love to engage with you.